Hi, I'm Scott, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to cite a piece of evidence in a debate. The first thing to note about how to cite a piece of evidence is that every single debate coach has some little difference in how they teach debaters how to cite evidence. So a lot of times your citation might not look exactly like your opponent's citation because their coach likely taught them something that's a little different for how they should format a cite for a piece of evidence. So for instance, there might be some things in this video that I do that are unique to how I teach debaters to cite a piece of evidence. I'm just doing this because we have a request form for videos in my team's Discord, and one of the new debaters requested that I do a video on citing evidence. So let's get into how to cite evidence. First, what is a citation? A citation is debate's way of doing MLA formatting. Pretty much what that means is that it's debate's way of saying, here is where we got our evidence, and if you don't trust us that that's where we got our evidence, you can go and find all of that info in a place where then you can go to the actual primary source that the debater is referencing during the debate. So every coach, however, there isn't like an MLA for debate or a Chicago style for debate. So every coach kind of teaches this a little different. So this is how I cite a piece of evidence. So I thought that the best way to do this would be to show you. So what I have done is I put in Starlink into Google because that is an affirmative that I know about. And I found the article from 3 days ago that was the third search result here that says space debris expert warns U.S. woefully behind in efforts to clean up junk in orbit. So this is the piece of evidence that we are going to cite and use for our example here. So when I want a piece of evidence, the first thing to note is I'm going to open up some type of word processing software. So you can use Google Docs. For this example, I'm going to use Verbatim because that's what I use to create evidence, but pretty much would be the same in any word processing software. You might just not have the same shortcuts and hotkeys that I do. So the first thing that I do is I'm going to take all of my information and I'm going to just paste it into the doc so I can manipulate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the web address, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go over to my Word document that I have opened up, and I am going to paste it in. Now you notice I am going to paste it in using the paste function or the F2 function. If you're using Google Docs, I highly recommend for all of these copy and paste functions that you use the paste special function so that you don't take the formatting from the original source into your own document and that you use the formatting and template in your document and you don't corrupt that. So then once I put the hyperlink in, I'm going to go back to the article and I'm going to get the article title, the date, the author name, all of that type of stuff. So that, luckily for me, is all in one place. So after I do that, I'm going to go back over to my Word document and I'm going to paste it in the exact same way. Now you'll notice I am just getting all of the information here for me to process it. This isn't how it's going to look. The last thing that we want to do is we want to go and we want to have some info about this author. So I'm going to go back to the internet and I'm going to look at the article. And for this article, it just so happens that if I click the author's name, that it brings up their biography. So I'm going to take all of the stuff from their biography and I'm going to take it and I am going to put it into my Word document so that I know some info about this person. So for this article, that's pretty much all we're going to have. Now, if you have problems finding who the source is, if it's not attributed, sometimes you have to scroll down to the bottom. It might have the qualifications of the author at the bottom, but sometimes it just helps to put their name into Google. A lot of times when I'm looking to find out a source, I put it into Google, and most likely I'm going to get their LinkedIn page, and it's going to say exactly who they are, their background, their job, all of that type of information. So once we have all of this information, we are going to put it into the format for how we cite a piece of evidence. So if we were going to cite a piece of evidence, let's give ourselves a template. Basically, we are going to have the author's last name and then the year. And then that part is almost always going to be bolded, and it is likely to be highlighted. Now, one of the things that I do that is unique to how I teach debaters how to cite evidence is I actually have the debaters put a little bit of the author's qualifications in the actual bolded part. And we'll talk about why I do that in a second. After that, underneath of that, you're going to have all of the information that is not necessary. So this is if they want or are questioning the source or want it, you can give it to them. So we might have the author's first name, some additional qualifications that they have, maybe the article title, the place of publication, if it's a journal article, maybe what publication it is, the volume, things like that. We're also going to want in there the date of publication. After we have all of that information in there, what we are going to do, as my webcam for some reason does not focus, we are going to then put in the hyperlink, the http www. We are going to put the hyperlink in. After we put the hyperlink in, I always tell my debaters to put an accessed date. So we're going to put accessed and then the date that it was accessed. So right now it's January 9th, 2020. So I'm going to put that. And then after that, I always put an attribution. So what that means for me is you're going to put your name, your initials, however you want to be recognized in this debate. So now what we need to do is we need to actually cite the example that we have here. So the author's last name is Irwin, and the year of publication is 2022. I think, yes. Irwin. And then here, I would put Space News Senior Staff Writer. And the reason that I do this is because I think that oftentimes in debates, the qualifications of the authors get lost in this latter part here and kind of make it so that you as the debater don't say, this super qualified piece of evidence I have is qualified, and let me talk about that. Let me explain why it matters in the debate. And people just don't do that enough. So that's why I kind of changed how I do this to make it so that I force my debaters to put the qualifications here in hopes that they will put the qualifications in themselves. Or not themselves, that they will use those qualifications during the debate. After that, I put in the author's name, any additional qualifications. And one of the things that I do is when you have all this info, I literally just copy paste all of that info in there so that if anybody questions this person, I have a bunch of different stuff to say about their qualifications. Now, obviously, if it's like 8 paragraphs and you're quoting Dr. Diamandius, who's quoted in 43,000 peer-reviewed scientific studies, like that person is going to have way too much stuff to say. So, might want to pick out some certain things, but for a lot of these people, I want as many qualifications in there as possible. After that, for this article, I'm going to take the date that it was published, and then I'm going to take the hyperlink. After I do the hyperlink, I'm going to do the date that it was accessed, and then because I, Scott, am the one creating this piece of evidence, I at the end would put SB because it's for me, and I right now put SB for my attribution. Now that can change, right? In the past I've put like Scott, I've put the team that I was coaching. But one of the things that you should be wary of here is some debaters play games here where, for instance, there was this meme 10 years ago for a team that I coached that they would never go for anything that I created. So what we did was we made every piece of evidence that we ever read created by me, because then nobody thought that we would ever go for anything. So, there is some sort of games playing aspect to debate that you can get in there that you should just be careful of. But this is a general view of how you should cite things. Now, two sort of caveats to this before I go. The first one is if you have two sources. So if you have two sources, I'm going to paste an example here in. Here is an example of two sources. Now, sometimes people will quote, if there's actually two, they will quote both people and have the qualifications for both people. Another thing that debaters often do, and you'll notice I cut this one, so there is the author qualification there, versus what a piece of evidence might look like that somebody else does a citation for, where that's probably not going to be there. But you notice rather than putting two people, they just put et al, because this Arbatov article is written by 5 people, and the person who created this citation doesn't feel like saying that doesn't feel like listing all 5 authors, so they put et al and list the first or the main author that contributes. So this is what you do when you have multiple authors for the source that you are talking about. The last thing is that sometimes in the citation part, people will put, like I put here, 5, 20, 21. Lots of times debaters will do that if it's a time-sensitive issue. So for me, I did that here because, if somebody had an older piece of 21 evidence, we could use that to post-date it. So hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you weren't too annoyed, I know I was, by this whole blurry webcam thing. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out that one out for next time. But until then, I will see you in the next video.